Good afternoon. My name is Daryl Parks at Parks & Crump out of Tallahassee, and with my client Sabrina Fulton and Mr. Tracy Martin. Attorney Natalie Jackson is here somewhere on there, but we wanted to comment and to talk with you just a little bit. As you all know, it's been a long week here in Sanford, and we have gotten deep into the case now. And the Martins wanted the public to know, very importantly, because the last couple of days have been very big in this case. Number one, they remain very encouraged by the witnesses who have come forth and who have, one, sacrificed their privacy, two, put their credibility on the line. And that's really important, because without those type of people doing that, this couldn't happen. Number three, they want to express how encouraged they are by the young lady, Rachel Gentile, who came forth today, stood there and testified to what she had observed, and did what she had to do to stay there, to be respectful to the court, so that this process can work. So on behalf of the Martins, they remain encouraged by that. Number two, we want to make it very clear to this family, race is not a part of this process. And anybody who tries to inject race into it is wrong. Let's be clear about it, very clear. This family does not want race as a part of this process and does not believe it should be a part of this process. Lastly, we believe that this jury is paying attention. We believe that we're going to get a fair verdict. We believe that the evidence in this case is overwhelming, that it's rather clear who the aggressor is. You continue to listen to the witnesses. They make it clear about the voices that they heard, and the evidence continues to mount in this case. And so we are very encouraged as we sit here on this Thursday of the week that we started the week with opening statements in this case. With that said, we'll take a few questions.
Do you regret the process by which this key witness came forward? And what I mean by that, do you all regret reaching out to her and then bringing her to the family attorney instead of redirecting?
No, let me address that, all right? Because I think that as the person who heads up our law firm, Parks, and my law partner did an incredible job. You must put it in context, right? These people hired our firm on a case, okay? My partner starts off and is pursuing the case. He's trying to find out who knows what, right? He goes and has a witness. She told you, you now know why she was very reluctant for many different reasons. Now, she's very reluctant to be involved, and you heard all the reasons. So we did the best statement that we could take from her, right? That is not the product of the state of Florida. It is not the product of O'Mara, George Zimmerman, or anyone else, right? It's the property of these people. They hired a private lawyer. So don't get into this game, right, that any statement that we made belongs to anybody, right? And the state of Florida can take care of itself. It takes care of itself. They don't need our resources. So I think that the taking of the statement is taken totally out of context by these proceedings of the sort, right? Because yes, she gave a statement, but it doesn't belong to them. It doesn't belong to the state. It belongs to these people. Their lawyers took it. Lawyers they hired, they paid. It's their statement. So to take it beyond that, right? Why you took it, how you took it, it's not his business. Not his business at all.
But you're saying race is not a factor.
He won't be asked. Just so you know, the Martins, who, as you know, will be possible witnesses, I'm not allowing them to ask questions.
No, that's fine, but you say race is not a factor, but the Martins were right there with the civil rights leaders at rallies all across the country as the racial undertones build on this case. It seems a little disingenuous that all of a sudden right now you're saying for this family.
Well, no, you know, the one time that we have said that you ought to consider, and no one disagrees with, not even you would disagree, that if it was reversed, if it was reversed and it was Trayvon who shot George Zimmerman, what do you think would happen?
But is it not the state's argument that George Zimmerman profiled Trayvon Martin?
Yes, I mean, and that's the allegation. The charging document is that he profiled him, and I think that's where you stay at, because he saw a guy he didn't know, right? He describes what he saw. And so in his own words. And it's important that that evidence is important. And I'm so happy the state started this case with the way it started it, because that's the real evidence in this case. You know, as we've heard a lot of evidence in this case, the core evidence in this case is very settled, whether they like it or not. It's very settled and is there. And so that's what it's saying.
So why did he
issues of the marches was to get us where we are now, according to the family, the Martin family, to get George Zimmerman arrested and to get here as far as this trial is going on. How does Sabrina and Tracy feel about that? And of course, I know this question has come up all the time. There's not one single black on this jury. Doesn't matter.
Well, no, I think the one thing, I'm a African American attorney in the South, right? We try cases all the time to juries that look like anybody. So that is a common phenomenon. So that's, if you're in this business, you don't worry about that, right? You find plenty of good people, and we've had great verdicts and never had African Americans on it. So you practice law, the rules are good, the rules allow you to pick people who can be fair and impartial. But let's go back to a second to the rallies. You didn't mention that. And I want to remind you all, because I think sometimes, because stories are reported in pieces, right, you sort of miss the whole story. Think about what happened, right? You had a guy where the system refused to function, right? The police refused to come. We all can now imagine that, right? They refused to come, they refused to act. What happens then? We beg, we plead, right? We beg and we plead, and nothing happens. And then the people react, right? The people react because there's an outrage. It just so happened that a good number of people were African American, but there were many other people, white people and so forth, right? They came, they were peaceful. Now, there were some people who took issue with that. There are many people who choose not to be engaged. That's their business, right? But there were about 30 or 40,000 people who felt compelled to show up and to show up early. So that shouldn't be knocked. And that movement took that our governor would act, right? Because, and you have to remember, because his name has not been mentioned at all. Mr. Wolfinger is the one who made the decision. And I never hear anybody say anything about his decision, right? When we all know he was actually the person who could make that decision. He did not make that decision. And I sat here many weeks now and not heard one person say the prosecutor refused to prosecute. Which is in essence what happened.
It's hard to separate race from this when you have words like profiling being used, and then today the state brings it in again with the cracker comments that Trayvon made.
Well, also too, I think she put it in the context that some young people loosely use language, right? They probably shouldn't use, right? I think the irony of it is that how he used the C word and the N word to describe the same person. Right, that's the irony. So that lets you know that in terms of meaning, it didn't have any significant meaning of demeaning anyone, right? It's just a slang that he used for his age group.
Do you think Rachel's testimony hurt the state's case?
No, she was amazing today. She was. Now let me stop right there, because you asked the question now. Because I think that yesterday she was tired. You know how most of us were tired today? You all have sat in that courtroom by 5 o'clock. We're about to fall off, right? And they took at the very end, so she was probably pretty tired. Had given a chance to have an overnight rest, to be refreshed, right? She sat there. She answered every question. Yes, sir. No, sir. Even, yes, sir, Mr. West, right? She maintained her context. But also, too, under our rules, you get to observe her demeanor and who she is, right? She is not you, or she's not a lawyer. She is a young lady going to the 12th grade, right? And she did her best. She did her best, right? This family is so proud of her, right?
With that said, though, it was a year ago that Mr. Crump invited us to a press conference in which he said that she would, quote, blow George Zimmerman's absurd self-defense claims out of the water. Did that happen?
Oh, yes, it did. Yes, it did. I think that when you think about she made about 2 or 3 very clear statements about what she heard and what she oversaw. The greatness of it is that the phone records corroborate what she said. And so those are major issues that they will have to deal with as they go through it. And she did blow it out the water.
What do you make of Don West asking, did Trayvon not bring race in the picture when he called Zimmerman a cracker?
Well, let me say this here. I really try not to talk about other members of the bar and comments that they may make, in the course of a trial. I think it's inappropriate for lawyers to do that. Ben and I have really tried to be very ethical lawyers in how we do things right. There are many things. I have a long list of highly charged. Their son is deceased, and although we have all this going on, this is very personal for them. And you have to always remember what they've gone through. They've gone through the whole aspect of it. I'll never forget the first day that they showed the picture of Trayvon and Mr. Martin's response, because that was the picture, one of the pictures that was similar to the one he had used to identify the body. So that was pretty tough. I'm just going to take a few more questions.
Are you saying that they were profiling, but now you're saying it's not racial profiling, but you are saying
it's profiling, yes.
It's not racial.
It's not racial.
How do you differentiate that? To follow up that, how do you differentiate that though? Because this is
easily. If you see a person just because of how they look, mainly the outerwear, the demeanor, and because he was saying he was out and suspicious. So using his own words, I don't think you have to look past that much.
But what was it about Trayvon?
Let me do this here, guys. I got to let other people ask a few questions. I've given you two a few.
Mr. Parks, was it smart for Mr. De La Rionda to take his first statement, to conduct his first interview of Ms. Gentile in Ms. Fulton's house,
Okay.
with Ms. Fulton by her side?
No, it wasn't. And I'm the big guy she described, okay? So I was there. I can. I think, number one, you all now have a chance to see that she's a very reluctant person, okay? So you needed this lady to get her to come. Otherwise, she wasn't having no parts of it, okay? And for a lot of reasons. So she made it, she didn't want to do it. And so for her to take it, we weren't interfering with their statement. We weren't coaching her. But she was there. Now, I didn't stay in the room. I didn't stay through the whole statement. Natalie didn't stay through the whole statement. People were coming and going. He was doing his business, and we could care less about him doing his business. We're glad that they were doing their business.
That's the question. Rachel Gentile was a memorable witness for a lot of different reasons.
Yes.
What really matters more is whether she's credible. So in the end,
I think
after 6.5 hours of the stand-up in 2 days, was she more memorable or was she more credible?
I think she's credible. The one thing about a witness, and you'll hear those lawyers talk about it in there, you get a chance to witness that person. Nobody in America will say that she planned or was trying to deceive anyone. No one. If you observe her demeanor, not a person in America can say that she planned and was trying to dodge questions, or anything like that. So I think she was genuine.
But can we clear up the issue in terms of how Zimmerman
I don't know, that's
profiled
your decision.
Trayvon? If race is not an issue, how do you think George Zimmerman profiled him?
Well, I think as he described it, he looked suspicious. And in looking suspicious, all he saw was this person. So that's profile. Let me take another question. You're aggressive, man.
Regarding how encouraged the parents are with Rachel Gentile coming forward clearly very reluctantly, before she did surface with that infamous Crump interview, there was no arrest, there was no special prosecutor, the police chief hadn't stepped aside yet, the rallies around the nation really weren't getting momentum. But then all of a sudden, he's charged with second-degree murder. So do they really basically give her the credit for getting the killer of their son arrested?
Well, I wouldn't say that. I think she was part of their evidence in terms of them taking statements, and they made a decision. I can't speak for the prosecutors. They're pretty, good lawyers. They can do that for themselves.
Without her coming forward, you think we would ever be here today?
Well, I think the other witnesses have all added a good bit of evidence to the case as it's going along. So now that you all have seen all these people who are testifying to what they saw, what they heard, and you got multiple people doing it, then it has a real effect to it.
I have to ask you a question.
Yes, please.
You talked about George Zimmerman, like if it was reversed in terms of like if Trayvon had shot George Zimmerman. I have to ask you this because I think in some ways I've heard you talk about race before. If Trayvon is white, does he get shot? If you think this case would be different if Trayvon was white?
Man.
Yeah, he's just being profiled, not for my race.
That's a tough question. I haven't thought about that one. You got me.
How are the Martins holding up?
The Martins, they're wonderful people. I hate to have them out here in the sun. I shouldn't say I have you in the sun. Seminole County has you in the sun. And y'all can check with them about that.
Just candidly sort of acknowledge that there is a little backpedaling that's happening right now
No.
when it comes to race.
What? No, let me tell you. I think that yesterday you all were reeling. Some of y'all reported it kind of fairly. You told both sides or whatever. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens tonight. I think, let me say, you have to, don't be a naive American. I think some Americans are naive. Don't be naive that you don't judge her for who she is as a high schooler who came in and testified with the guy who was asking her the questions in the way that he was, who raised his voice, who did all these things, right? She didn't do that, right? So if you report, y'all also witnessed what he did in court today, right? I will see how y'all report that. right? He did some things. Y'all know what he did. I won't say what it is. So I'm gonna be a good lawyer and not say what it is. But he did some things. So you all can, judge. You judged her yesterday. Now think about it. The one comment she made at the end, right, almost was half of y'all's story, right? So let's see if some of the things, other things that happened today, what role it plays. But she was good. I mean, yes sir, no sir. She was respectful. She respected the court. When the judge addressed her, she said yes ma'am. So she did the things that a young person should do, and he was allowed to cross her to, Jesus comes.
So if this case is not about race, and yet this case sparked a national debate about race, why are you only now 16 months later saying the conversation's wrong?
You know what's simple? Let me say what you all know. America doesn't like to talk about race, right? It's not a comfortable conversation for anyone, right? In fact, we've seen that in the course of these proceedings in terms of when you ask people about it, nobody wants to deal with that. So we don't deal with that, right? We live in a place that is integrated, We all live together, and you see people for who they are and what they are. And so I don't think it's right? Because here's what it does. When you try to inject race into a case like this here, that means you're trying to push somebody who's making a decision one way or the other. And that's not what you want. You want a nice, one thing I agree with, I listened to Mr. O'Mara's press conference, I agree with him. We want a nice, fair proceeding.
So why did you say this when the case first broke? Why did you say when Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson were down in Sanford, Florida, this is not about race? Why are you only saying it now?
Well, let me say this here. I think you have to understand the context it was said in, right? Highly emotional. When you're having a rally, you got people who are infumed about what has happened, right? And you weren't getting any action. Y'all have to understand. We do understand, right? The governor didn't make that appointment to the day of the rally. That was the day because apparently there were 30 or 40,000 people who thought it important enough, right? Who thought it important enough to show up. And I think for us as Americans, that says something.
None of us here are the jury. None of us were there that night. But let's just presume for a moment that George Zimmerman did in fact profile Trayvon, and he is.
Who are you with?
I'm with WSVN Miami.
Okay, all right.
And he
Channel
is
7.
found guilty. And now you say this is not about race. Doesn't that mean that Trayvon died in vain if nothing has changed because of his death?
No, let me say this. I think things are changing. These folks have started a foundation, right, that is addressing violence with youth, right? And that, I think Trayvon's name will be synonymous with violence, gun violence, right? And they have started the movement. There are very few cases that we've seen in America where an African-American child who's lost his life. You heard a few people in the course of this case say, what's the big fuss, right? Trayvon has moved the ball that much further, right? And as a parent, we don't know what's going to happen in this courtroom, right? I mean, a lot of things are going on. But these folks have made it one of their life's mission to go around the country and to put forth anti-gun violence for all people, right? So Trayvon's legacy is way bigger than what's going on here. I mean, his name and the way that people treat these people in the general public when they go around, it's a blessing. So, y'all, I got to get ready to stop because my client's been out here longer than, but you can have the last one.
It's a matter of time, and I'm talking about emotion. You guys have been through a lot, but it's going to be, and you watch what's going on in the court proceedings, and you listen to testimony, and you've seen the pictures. It's going to be hard, I would imagine, when you get ready to get up and take that stand. How are you preparing these two people for what's ahead?
They can't talk right now per my instruction, but obviously it's going to be very, very tough, right? And we hope that the folks who will be doing the question will be respectful, right, of the sensitivity of the situation. I'm sure none of us want to try this case again. So.
Are you worried that the fighting is going to come in? It almost came in today. I think it was seconds away from coming in. Trayvon's fighting in the past. Are you worried about that?
No, because again, Trayvon had never met this guy before, at all, right? And so there's no evidence that suggests so far that Trayvon did anything to George Zimmerman. So y'all, we have to go now. And thank you all for coming, and we hope you answered some of your questions. Thank you for the time. I'm going to stick around. I just got to get them out of here, right? Yes, I'm with you.